Hi, I am going to walk through the PMT report with you guys. Well, actually, the PMT reporting system. My name is Polly Romine. I am a VOCA grant analyst with UOVC. I am here on the screen after you log into the system. This is the federal system. We do use two different grant management systems. The Utah State system is the Salesforce one that's blue and gray. This system is the federal government. You'll Office of Justice Programs, Department of Justice. You'll see OVC, Office for Victims of Crime, different than UOVC, Utah Office for Victims of Crime. So a couple of things getting into the system. If you are the person that does this report, you should have contacted your grant analyst. They can add you to this system. We are not able to reset passwords. This training recording will be included with a small PowerPoint. I am going to post the phone number and email address of these guys. So if you are struggling to log in, you can't log in, you can contact them. Again, UOVC, your grant analyst, we have no way to reset your password. All we can do is add you to the system. So you should have received an email creating a password for this system, and gotten a login screen. And once you log in, you should land here where you're able to click on this OVC PMT button. So we will go in there. Okay, looks like it's working. Yay. So I have two logins here. Most people will only have one. I think I only know of a couple different agencies that have two, and that's because they have a different grant through OJP. So most of you will only have one login if it asks you to log in here at all. I apologize. It's been a while since I've been a subgrantee and I don't quite remember. So it might actually take you straight to this screen when you log in. As you can see, there are tabs up here to help you navigate through this system. For some reason, it's taking me straight to my SAR. I used to be the grant analyst for this grant, so that's why I have a login for this grant. For the SAR, you'll hear us say SAR and you'll hear us say PMT. We're going to say PMT most often. The SAR is done once a year in about September/October. The SAR is the basis or the foundation of your PMT. I'm not going to talk too much about the SAR because we're going to do a different training on the SAR. There actually is a different training on the SAR in the grant management system or grant management training that usually is done earlier in the year in about July, August timeframe. If you need that training, we can always send that to you. But here in the SAR, you can see all the different awards that your agency has had over the years. Some agencies only have a handful, some agencies only have one because this is your first grant. So again, the SAR is only done one time a year. Your grant analyst will help you walk through when it's time to do the SAR again. So we are going to spend most of our time in the Enter Data tab. OVC PMT Home takes you to a different website that has some more information about some of the things the federal government wants you to know about. Administration, you guys might not have this tab, but if you do, it's just going to list your different grants that you have with OJP. Reports tab, let's go to need help. This tab is a little tricky. It looks like there's only two things here, and so many people probably ignore this tab and think this isn't going to help me very much. But actually, when you click on this tab, it takes you to some things that are pretty helpful. When you are going through the SAR, there is this printed out information, downloadable PDF that you can look at from the federal government, instructions on how to do the SAR. They have the same thing for the PMT. So we actually have a copy of this. I send it out to my subgrantees every quarter, but this is the blank PMT that you can fill out. You can click on it, download it. I highly recommend you do that, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But there is more information here. Usually there is attached here, there are some definitions. This is actually the first time that I have not seen them here in quite a while. The federal government gave us definitions in 2019. I still have those definitions. I can still send them to you. It is helpful to have those federal definitions because this is the federal website. This is the federal system. The feds create this. They decide what they want us to report on. Sometimes there are questions about what they mean and what they're asking us to do. So those definitions can be helpful. Again, we can send them to you if they are not attached here. So this need help tab is actually more than just email and feedback. Reports, really quick, when you click on that little guy, when about 2 or 3 times a year, the federal government will send us a list of questions on on reports that they have. So every once in a while they get together and they randomly pick a handful of grants, probably about 50 grants, and they go through and they check for errors. Well, actually they probably check more grants, but we get a list of between 30 and 50 errors sometimes. So when we email you and ask you to go back into a specific quarter, this can be a place, this reports tab can be a place that you go to access those old grants, and you can see the data. You can actually print out this data if you need to print it out for a report to your governing body or something like that, or just to check your numbers, or if the auditors are asking for something. This is where you can go to print your quarterly reports for the PMT. And we call things a lot of different names. We call them quarterlies. We call reporting goals and objectives. Sometimes those get very confusing. I try to only call goals and objectives the goals and objectives that you put into the Utah grant management system. When I talk about the data that you're going to put into this federal system, I call it the PMT, performance management. The PMT data and the goals and objectives, we have tried to mirror very closely. So you only have to track basically this information that the federal government is asking you for. So it can get confusing because your goals and objectives do look like the PMT questions and data that is being asked to be reported on. So if you can get used to just knowing there's a Utah grant management system that's the goals and objectives, and there is a federal system for the PMT. We sometimes interchangeably call that, I'm so sorry, the quarterly. So when we're talking about the quarterly, usually when I am saying quarterly, I mean everything. We're talking about PMT report, goals and objectives, and you're making sure that all your billing are in for the quarter. So anyway, just also know we call things different things sometimes from the feds, between each other. It can get confusing. So if you're confused about what we actually mean, please ask us, because it can be confusing. So something that's also helpful to know, you'll notice that I'm sort of circling this block. There's kind of this defined line of 4 quarters. You'll notice that it starts with October and goes October, and then January, and then April, and then July. Some of you may know this, but some of you may not realize that the federal year starts in October. So October 1st is the first quarter of the federal grant year. So when this can be confusing as well. When we start VOCA, we start July 1st. And so it can get confusing when we're talking about quarter one federal or quarter one like regular VOCA or state. And then we won't even talk about SASP and VAWA, because SASP and VAWA run on calendar year, right? So VAWA and SASP start January 1st. For purposes of VAWA and SASP, put them out of your mind. They have a different federal grant system. So that will be a different training. So some of you who have a VOCA and a VAWA grant, you have 3 different grant systems, and it can be confusing. So, but back to the different quarters, just sort of keep in mind that the federal starts in October. We have been trying to not call the quarters quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, because we do realize it can be confusing between all the different grants and all the different agencies. So I've been trying to delineate. I'm talking about which quarter. So we are getting ready. I am recording this March 28th, and we're getting ready to do the January through March billing and quarterlies. So the January through March payment requests and PMT and goals and objectives. So when I call January through March, for us in the state, it's quarter 3, but for the feds, it's quarter 2, right? So just, it can be confusing. You guys only see this, what, 3, 4, well, you should see it 4 or 5 times a year, not 3. Please see it more than 3 times a year. But just know there is some confusion there. Also, something to recognize and remember is, because October is the very first quarter of the federal year, that is when the federal government wants you to report all your victims as new in October. This can get confusing. We do have other trainings on this as well, but I will mention it because it is sort of important. As you go to do January through March, you do have to keep track of who is new and what victims, clients, survivors have you served in previous quarters. So you will do that in every month, or every quarter, except for October through December for the PMT. This is the only place that you have to keep track of who's new versus who's not new. Again, we will do some trainings on this, and I think there is a little bit of a training on this. But anyway, just as you move into the January through March, all your victims, you should be tracking who's new and who's not new. So for example, if you served Jane in October, Jane would not be new if you served her again in January. So if you have questions on that, please ask us. Again, we are going to do some more specific, detailed trainings on that as well. So, okay, we are going to spend the majority of the time in this Enter Data tab. So this is actually the tab that you are going to put all your data into. If you get an email from us that says, hey, the federal government has questions on this, they need answers, or they need you to adjust your numbers, you will do it in the Enter Data tab. This right here, the dates where it says select reporting period, right now it only has October through December, because the federal government has not opened up the reporting period through January through March. So come April 1st, we should be able to see that the January through March is 2022 is a selection here. So I know you guys can't see it, but when you click on this little down arrow, as I am doing now, it gives me a whole bunch of different dates that you can scroll through. You scroll down, if you're looking through for a different quarter, say if the federal government has had questions about, I don't know, let's say July 1st through September 1st of last year, you can go select that date period and it will open up that grant with that data. So when I hit continue right here, I'm going to, just for training's sake, I am going to go into this October through December report that was finished just last quarter. So when you go to enter a brand new quarter, all of this information will be blank and you will put in your numbers. So this red wording up here is important. Please be aware your session will time out in 30 minutes when you stop saving data. When they say 30 minutes, they mean 30 minutes. I can't even tell you how many agencies call and email super frustrated, rightfully so, that they have just spent 45 minutes or half an hour putting in their information. And when they go to save it, it's not there. This is because it took a little bit longer. It took 31 minutes to enter your information, and it will not save if you have not been saving it. So I highly, highly, highly recommend either going to the Need Help, printing out that blank PMT report, or I email that blank PMT report to my subgrantees. Your grant analyst can send it to you as well. Get a copy of that blank PMT report. It's all these questions that are blank. Fill it in by hand. And then when you log in here, you can just hurry and get it done in 30 minutes. All the data's there. You don't need to search and go back and wonder and do math. It's all right there. You can just enter it real quick, save, and be done. That's going to save you so much time and heartbreak and heartache, because it stinks when that data, you just spent all that time entering data and then it's gone. I hate that very, very much. I don't know why you can't have more than 30 minutes to enter data, but anyway. So you will see, because this again is October through December, and October was the first reporting quarter of the year for the federal government, that these numbers match. 1 and 3 match. 1 is the total number of individuals, and 3 is asking who is new. So when we go to do January through March, April through June, July through September, you will probably not have matching 1 and 3. They're going to be different. They should be different unless you don't serve people that you have served before again, if that makes sense. Okay, so total of anonymous. Oh, one thing that is pretty cool about this report, if you sort of rest on some of these lines, these little boxes of instructions, as you can see here, or definitions do report up. It doesn't happen on every section, I notice, but it is happening on most of them. That is helpful as you're going along. It does, like right here, I'm hovering on Hispanic or Latino. This is the federal government's definition. This is not UOVC's definition. This is the federal government's definition and information on what they want us to track, what they want you to track. So that is pretty helpful. Just a little bit sort of a caution on anonymous contacts. There is some discretion, there is some discussion here on whether or not you actually should be putting a number in anonymous. Most people, when they call, most victims, survivors, clients, when they call, they'll be giving you information. You'll be able to discern information, what type of crime they had, what gender they are. They're going to give you something about their situation or their information that you can track. And so in the past, that's technically been not quite anonymous. So anyway, we can have a discussion about this off of the training if you really feel strongly that you are doing anonymous. Usually anonymous is hotlines where you're not asking, you're not receiving any information, you're not helping them with, a police interview, or you're not doing an application or something for them. That's strictly just you're giving out information. We have a small number of those type of grants. So most people probably should, I'm going to be very careful at saying not put numbers in here, but just maybe if you can track something about the situation that your person is giving you probably don't need to track them in anonymous. So right here underneath number 3 is a box that says we cannot track new individuals. This goes along with anonymous a little bit. We cannot track new individuals. You should be able to track new individuals. Most 99.9% of you should be able to track new individuals in reasonable, somewhat mostly ways. This box is one of the major questions that come back from the federal government on whether this box is marked. If this box is marked and question 3 is marked, then they say, if you can't track new individuals, then why do you have a number in question 3? And we say, oh, that's a good question. We will get with the sub-grantee. Then we email you and say, hey, do you want to unmark the box? And and sometimes we don't know if the box is marking automatically by, on itself when you log in. We don't know if it's like user error. We don't know what's necessarily happening, but this box gets marked a lot when it didn't mean to be. So just as you go through, just make sure that you're unmarking this box. I also want to say, if we're emailing you that the feds have come back with questions, don't feel bad. They randomly choose people. They randomly choose reports. Every single agency is getting that. If you haven't gotten it yet, you will in the future. Don't feel bad. We all make mistakes, and there's all sorts of sometimes weird and wonky things that happen, right? So just, we'll walk you through what we need from you, and we respond to the feds. So it can sound scary. Sometimes it's hard to write that in an email. Hopefully we're not as scary as it is written in email. But yeah, just a little information on that. So, okay. So as we scroll down here, there's lots of instruction. If you have questions, make sure you're reading the instructions. So 802 up here is going to be important because you're going to see that it matches here in a few of these categories. It matches in race and ethnicity. It matches in gender identity. It matches in age. 802, 802, 802. So each one of those 802 people up here has a race, has a gender, has an age. Don't be afraid to use not reported. If you don't know, you don't know, and that's okay. But these numbers should still add up to 802. So use not reported, not reported. Don't use not tracked. Every single agency should be tracking. Again, except if you have a special exception, I'm not talking about you, but if you have a special exception, you would know. If you don't know, then you do not have a special exemption. So every single agency should be tracking age, gender, race, whether the person is new or not, whether they're anonymous. So just make sure that those ages, those demographics match each other, and these numbers all come out the same as question 1. Let's see. Oh, it just left my mind. Okay, that's what I get for trying to talk about too much too fast. When I practiced this training came out to be half an hour, and I was like, oh my gosh, this might still be half an hour, but we'll see. Okay, so you'll notice as we keep moving down into types of victimizations that these numbers, 914, the total here, is more than 802, is more than question 1. And that is because you'll see in question B down here that 106 people reported they have more than one type of crime. So of those 802 people in question 1, 106 reported they have more than one crime happening to them. And we can talk about how to track. You should be tracking separate crimes separately. If you have the same victim, but a different crime happens to them, you count them again as a different crime unless multiple crimes are happening to them in one instance. Stalking and harassment, let's see what goes together sometimes. Kidnapping and domestic violence, sometimes those crimes go together. So if you have questions about how to track, whether you should be tracking the same victim 2 different times, please let us know and we can talk about that. One thing I want to mention really quick while we're here is this destruction of property in other. There are some crimes that VOCA does not cover, and some types of some incidents. So VOCA is not able to cover property or property crimes. There has to be a threat of personal violence. So the crime has to be against a person. So that means that types of crime like burglary, or if the crime is done to a business, so Walmart cannot be a victim, according to, in the world of VOCA. Yes, they're a victim, but in the world of VOCA, like, so if you're assisting businesses, say as a county attorney, victim advocate, make sure you're not counting that in your VOCA stats. Make sure you're not spending VOCA time on that. If you're 100% hours on VOCA, make sure you adjust something so that you have a little bit of time to help businesses and other types of non-crimes, because we have to be able to say that we've trained you on this and that you're not reporting those types of services and crimes on VOCA time. So this destruction of property might have to be explained that it happened along with a threat of violence. If this grant or this report had been picked up by the feds to audit, they probably would have come back and said, what's destruction of property? That's not necessarily a VOCA crime. So dog bites where the animal is not sicked on somebody, suicides are not VOCA covered. If it's an accident or if it's, just an incident, there has to be a chargeable crime. They're typically Chapter 5 offenses. There is some agency discretion there. So if you have questions about what VOCA can and can't cover, what you can do and not do on VOCA time, please let your grant analyst know. Please, it's super important. The feds are checking these types of things. So, okay. So when we're doing this report in real time, there will be a save button down here. Hopefully you can see me circling the bottom. There'll be a segue to save, a segue to goodbye, I like to call it. It'll say save or next or something like that. And then it will take you to this next tab up here. You can see these different tabs. And in your report, when you're actually doing this report, you can go between these. If you have questions or need to look back at something, or if you get an error, it'll say, this does not match question 3 or question 1. So you can navigate between these tabs up here. And as you can see, it will not let me change any of these numbers because your grant analyst has to go in and unlock it for you. So if you need your grant analyst, if you need to change any of these numbers for some reason, let your grant analyst know so we can unlock it for you. Okay, make sure you're assisting your clients, victims, survivors with CVR. You need to be talking about CVR with them. It is a federal law when you receive VOCA money that you do have to be talking to them and referring them to about victim compensation, CVR, the other side of UOVC that helps pay those crime victim or crime related expenses. If you don't know what CVR is, please contact your grant analyst and let us know. We can help get you in touch with some training on CVR. Let's see. So one of the other questions that we've been getting recently from the feds, which I've never seen before until just this last quarter, was that these boxes right here, you can see by A, B, C, and D, and E under 7, they're all marked here. And that's because in A, B, C, D, and E, there's numbers in here. People have been served There have been services provided in each of A, B, C, D, and E categories. So, but the question from the feds has been, you mark section A, but didn't provide any numbers for that section. So we either need numbers in section or we need the box unmarked. So you may see a question coming back on your PMT regarding that. So just make sure there's numbers in the section that you're marking. If you mark section A, make sure there's numbers in section A. So you'll notice down here, section A, section B, under 8. So this part can be super confusing. This is one of the biggest questions we do get back from the Fed. It does say section 8, A, B, C, D, and E don't match, basically. This is not word for word, but basically that A, B, C, D, and E don't match question 1. So A, B, C, D, and E, sometimes people are like, what are they talking about? Because, this is just services. And it's tucked away in here, very nice and neat. Enter the number of individuals, and it's the very top one under the heading, I guess I'll say. So A, enter the number of individuals, there's 358. B, enter the number of individuals, there's 771. C, there's 37. D, there's 1. E, there's 14. So this can get lost pretty easily. And the system doesn't count them up for you. So if you counted up 14, 1, 37, B, 771, and A, 358, you'd come out to 1129 individuals, right? It is more than 802, which was our number 1 number. And I hope I'm making sense. A, B, C, D, and E, when you add up these numbers, they need to equal as much as question number 1. They can be more. So again, when we add up these ones today, right in front of us, they add up to 1129. But you will get an error if these guys only added up to say 800. It will give you an error. Sometimes it doesn't, though. I'm not sure why. But sometimes it will let it go through and the feds will add it up and they'll say A, B, C, and D don't add up to number 1, to question number 1. And so it can be super confusing because as you just glance at this, it looks like, oh, it's just services and there's no total down here. But that's what they're talking about. They're talking about adding up, enter the number of individuals. So as you read the question, it'll say individuals, and then it'll say number of times the service was provided for these 358 people. 358 individuals got all of these services right here. You'll get an error also when you're entering this, and you've probably already seen it. There needs to be at least one service for each person. So if you put in 400 right here and you only had 300 right here, it would give you an error and it wouldn't let you submit it. So, okay. There will be a segue to goodbye here. There'll be save or next down here at the bottom for you to click, and then it would take you to the review tab. The review tab is going to look different. It's basically just going to be a quick rundown of all the numbers you entered. This just says it's been completed because the grant analyst, your grant analyst has reviewed and quote unquote, like entered in the data. So just a little bit of information. Some agencies want their grant analysts to review all their data before they submit it. That's not quite possible because UOVC doesn't have access to your data. And also there's a little bit of discretion about why you're putting numbers in where and all sorts of little tiny things that make it a little bit impossible for UOVC to be like the one to say, hey, yeah, this number should go here and this number should go here. We can help you, the first couple of times or so if you're struggling a bit, but we really do suggest that you use the printable blank PMT report. Fill that out first. If you're having questions on that, contact UOVC at that time. The other thing to mention here is that the auditors also ask you for information regarding your PMT during the site visit / desk review. So one of the things that I highly suggest is that when you are getting ready to do your PMT, you save your data somehow, whether you're using VS tracking or Apricot or gosh, do you pull numbers from Justware? I can't remember if agencies tell us that they do. Some of you are just using an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of stuff. Some find a way to make that data save, print it, screenshot it, something so that when your UOVC auditor, by the way, when your UOVC auditor asks you for that data, you can say to them, this is the data on which I submitted this PMT report. And that will help you if there's any discrepancies. Because what seems to be happening is when the auditors go out and then there's a discrepancy, as you're going back through your PMT data, it might be a couple of months, it might be 3 months, it might be longer if the federal government is asking you for something. And so it might be a little bit harder to recall what was going on. But if you can find your concrete data that you printed, you saved a copy of it, of a screenshot or something of the Excel spreadsheet, you can say, oh, this is why I put that number in. Sometimes our systems change when classifications of a victim changes or classification of a crime changes. Sometimes there's just mistyping of numbers or something. So it does help if you have the actual data from each quarter that you put your PMT report in. I would not just rely on, oh, it's in VS tracking. Again, VS tracking, we know that the data changes in VS tracking. I don't know if it changes automatically or if you have to go in and like manipulate the data, but we know that it does happen. So anyway, it will help you in the long run if you just have a folder, throw everything for that quarter in a folder, all your billing stuff, all your goals and objective stuff, anything that's relatable, your board report that you did that quarter or something, throw it all in a folder in case the auditors come by asking for it. So let me double check my little notes here and make sure I have talked to you guys about everything I wanted to talk to you. I am going to, I think I mentioned it, but I'm going to, in a PowerPoint, I'm going to send you the contact information for OVC. So if you lock yourself out or you have to reset your password, gosh, when I do these trainings, I always go back, always, and I think, why didn't I talk about that? But it looks like I have touched on everything in my notes. So I am going to end this part of the training, and we will, I'll see you in the next one. We'll attach this to the PowerPoint, and so you can have a little bit of this information in writing too. Thanks for watching this. I'll see you guys later.